Good evening, folks, and welcome to what I'm going to like to call Monday Night Politics, especially because we're next to the big election cycle. Um, the U.S. House and some Senate races are up, as well as our local elections. And we're going to sit here and discuss that tonight. That's what this show will be about. This is a combination effect of the Beach Brothers show and the Community Action Team Streamteam. Um, and we'll also have on some guests, but just because it is encompassing all of those shows, I'm going to briefly show on here our new and improved The Beach Brothers Show introduction. You're watching The Beach Brothers Show.
So look, the Beach Brothers Show is a show where we deal with Virginia business and politics. We want to say thanks to Southern Volkswagen Greenbrier for their great level of sponsorship. If you need a new car, you don't need to go far. Within the so-called Black community, money circulates. In other words, stays in the community one day. In our Latino community, it stays in 1 week, 7 days. All right. And in the Asian community, 30 days. And, Jewish community, a little more than that. And then the general white community stays in there for unmeasurable amount of time. So the HR Green Book is our strategy to address the circulation. So start your search today in the HR Green Book, and let's make sure our money circulates stronger and longer. And now it's time to get beachy on the Beach Brothers Show.
And we are also here at the Community Action Team 757 Battlecat Stream Team. So I will be a host of both of those tonight. And also, I will admit I am a member of the Virginia Beach Democratic Committee. I'm a co-founder of the Virginia Beach Progressive Caucus. I'll try my best to withhold some of my biases tonight as we discuss various races from the highest highs of the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, all the way down to our municipal races in some various cities like Virginia Beach and the peninsula, like Hampton and Portsmouth, of course. And that's why we will bring on our guests like Ms. Nakia Miller and Mr. Mike Maskell to discuss some of those cities as well and all of those races. And let me switch on over to the comment section. Oh, man, this is going to be a great night because, as you guys know, tomorrow's the big guns. Tomorrow's the big stuff. So we're going to discuss what our thoughts are and sort of make prognostications as to what might happen in the races tomorrow. So let's begin actually with the United States Senate, which, as we know, is sort of deadlocked right now with 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans. A lot of tight races that could sway this entire thing, notably in Georgia, where Raphael Warnock, current senator and incumbent, is taking on Herschel Walker, the great football player. Something like that could sway the entirety of the Senate. So I'd like to field it to you guys. What's your opinion as to how the United States Senate will be come Thursday? And you guys could just stream of consciousness. You can, it's no real turns here.
Well, you certainly don't start with the easy question.
Personally, I will lead off by saying that I kind of think it's going to start to lean a little R by Thursday.
Well, I mean, it's really hard to say. Here's hoping that's not the case, but the margin is hanging by a thread as it is. I mean, we have the vice president as the tie-breaking vote right now. It's split 50-50. So even just one seat changing from blue to red will change the leadership of the Senate.
We think it's a little weird that as important as Georgia is, heck, this last year in January was a special election where two new senators were sent, Ossoff and Warnock, and that got us to where we're at with the 50-50, and then suddenly we have Georgia up again. We could say what we want about how the controversies, you might say, with the Walker campaign, but it still seems like there's enough of an internal Republican momentum that, hey, they're going to come out and support him. What do you think it would take, and is it just in Georgia or nationwide, that we can actually institute a good Democrat momentum to counter that? Nakia, any thoughts?
Well, I just cannot. I mean, stranger things have happened in Senate races, but I just cannot see where that seat is going to shift. I can't intelligibly think that that will happen. If you've watched the debates that have happened between Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock, to say that it was a living, breathing Saturday Night Live is an understatement.
Let's just say he's easy to mock.
Easy to mock. Easy to mock. There were those moments where I was just sitting there watching it like, you can't be serious. I do believe that there will be Republican momentum because of the results that occurred, in the presidential. But alongside that, I also think that there will be equal to more Democratic momentum, if not solely because of Stacey Abrams. I think that that momentum could cancel each other out. Excuse me, I had to be a mom for a second. But yeah, I think that the
if I may jump in here for a second.
But yeah,
I'm curious. We know Stacey has made a lot of big national news the past few years because of her borderline singular efforts to organize the state of Georgia to turn out more and more Democratic votes. Her system is actually trying to be copied in other states like Virginia. I have no idea about this, but do you think that her steps toward that has gone through as 2022 like it was in 2021 and 2020? Because I think there's a governor race there too.
Yeah, there's a the governor's race is between Brian Kemp and Stacey Abrams again. Mm-hmm. So this is a repeat.
And if I recall, some of the Trump wing of the Republican Party sort of soured on Brian Kemp.
Absolutely.
They thought he didn't do enough to overturn Georgia's election results. And I wonder if, given another year or so, Georgia might grow to like him like Florida has grown to like DeSantis. Or if that's even a thing, and Republicans just always all show up for Republicans, regardless of whether or not they dislike how much they support Trump or not.
I think that Georgia is kind of a different animal. And the reason why I think so is that, Stacey Abrams, after the 2020 election, she pretty much so had the ability to take any position she wanted. Like, she could have literally called herself the high priestess of the United States, and people would have just been like, take that, be you. It was actually a shock that she did not end up as the chair of the DNC and that Jamie Harrison did. But political pundits have been basically saying that she did not get the chair position of the DNC because she didn't want it. That her intention has always been Georgia, and it's always been to produce results in Georgia. So, this rematch between Brian Kemp and Stacey Abrams is just that. It's you are going to probably see record numbers in Georgia, from the country, from but also from those Atlanta suburbs. They're going to show up in and these are just my hypothesis from, just kind of studying it a little bit. They're probably going to show up in presidential numbers, if not more. Only because of the importance of the gubernatorial run, if not anything. I don't honestly think that Warnock is in any real jeopardy. But, that's, even though it's, very important that things stay the way that they are, I honestly will probably be paying more attention to the gubernatorial run in Georgia more than I will Warnock Walker.
If I recall, there's also like a race in Arizona. I think that's made some national news because I think the Republican there is like very, very anti-2020 election. I know I was just in Charlotte over the weekend with my new beautiful wife, and
congratulations!
Thank you for that. We saw a lot of political ads that were featuring the name Beasley and Dunn, which I think that's a Senate race. And if I'm looking at polls, I think Dunn, the Republican, was leading in that. If I remember looking at Real Clear Politics for the Warnock race, I think Walker's either at like one ahead or statistical tie. And this is weird because he's so controversial due to him being sort of anti even what Republicans would want to vote for.
Yeah.
And yet he's still going to get his share of votes there.
I think this is largely driven by partisanship. I mean, if it was a contest of candidate quality, Herschel Walker wouldn't even be on the field.
Part of the conversation.
But it's not about candidate quality. It's solely about a number of votes in the Senate. And so the election results there for every office, for Senate, for governor, it's all going to be driven by which side drives out the most of their voters to go vote. Because, it's not like any Republican voters who are disappointed in Brian Kemp for not doing more to overturn the 2020 election. It's not like any of those are going to switch and become Stacey Abrams voters as a result. They're still going to come out and vote for Brian Kemp. But something I have seen interesting in some polls is there are some Republican voters, I think it was 10% or so that I saw in one poll, that said that they were considering not voting for Senate or the Libertarian candidate, like splitting their ticket, because Herschel Walker is such just a bad candidate. He's honestly kind of a joke as a candidate. And the only reason that I've seen any Republican voter give for why they're voting for Herschel Walker is solely for the numbers in the Senate. And if 10% of the Republican voters decide just to not vote in the Senate race, Brian Kemp could win the governor's race and Herschel Walker still lose the Senate race, because it's that close.
Or like, then the other alternative is because the Senate race is just so polarizing and it's so comedic, that, a portion of your Republican base might just choose not to vote at all, which, you could absolutely run into that as well. And if that happens, then Abrams and Warnock win.
Which is ironic, since the Republican strategy in Georgia has largely been to try to discourage Democratic voters, in particular Black voters, from going out to vote. Putting fewer voting machines in Black precincts, making it illegal to give people water after waiting in line. But I think some of those measures might actually backfire, because I think people hearing about that, it's going to make them more determined. Like, you want to stop me from voting? Well, watch me vote,
Yeah, watch me vote.
Do you think this is also something that would sort of fall down a little bit to the greater national House races? Because that is like what, a 5 to 6 seat majority that the Democrats currently have in the United States House, and that is incredibly tight. And there is various momentums in either way that could sway it. I think I listened once to the current congresswoman in the second district say that is ranked 218, which would be right smack in the middle of whether or not it goes Republican or Democrat. And we'll talk about those races in a second. But do you think that there might not actually be that much change at all with the House, or there is definitely a wave coming?
Well, it's hard to call, honestly. You know, ironically enough, there are House races that you would never consider competitive that now are. And they're those that, have always been kind of toss-ups that are dead heats. And, crazy enough, Virginia is in the middle of all that.
Yeah, multiple races.
You look at CD2 and CD3, CD2 is in a statistical deadlock between Kiggins and Luria. And, with the shifts in the, the shifts due to the redistricting, it basically all comes down to Virginia Beach in CD2 because the other areas cancel out each other. So Virginia, if you look at it in that perspective, Virginia Beach is it. But
same thing actually happened last year with the governor race. It was Virginia Beach that flipped to voting for Youngkin, and that's what I think sort of touched that around.
Yep. And and then you look in CD3. I don't remember in my entire adult life and most of my childhood where Bobby Scott has ever had to campaign, like talking about it.
There were plenty of times he didn't even have a competition.
Exactly. He either was running unopposed or he was running against an idiot. And Terry Namkung is a formidable opponent. And, and I can't, I can tell you being on the peninsula, in Hampton, Bobby Scott has never, ever sent a mailer out in Hampton. Never. Yet.
Second, I'm going to try and find a little bit more commentary from a couple of friends of mine regarding specifically Bobby Scott. Mr. Sergio, who's also a member of the Community Action Team, I believe he had mentioned that he had voted actually for Mr. Namkung. And he said, I believe he genuinely wants to help Portsmouth. Bobby Scott has been in that office for 30 years and hasn't fought for a damn thing here. All he does is host gathering at Louise's house. And so I'm of the opinion, is that a significant voting block? Or is it just, you might find randomly people who just don't like what he might have done because he's been there for 30 years?
The answer is yes.
Or they really like Terry?
I think it's a little bit of both. I can tell you, and I've been at the voter registrar's office for the better part of all 44 days, of early voting. And that is a consensus, that you have a large part of the electorate that, you have the Republican base, but then you also have a large part of the Democratic base that have been looking for excuses to not vote for Bobby Scott. And they're showing up. I know because they have talked to me. And when you look at you look at Namkung Scott, you know, Terry is a well-educated man, and he has given Bobby Scott a significant challenge, and people are impressed with him, and they have gone to the polls for him. And I'm not just talking about Republicans, I'm talking about Democrats as well. And it's going to be interesting. I don't think that CD3 is going to be the double digit, double digit norm that it is. I think that it has the ability to swing, honestly, either way, and it's going to be close.
I want to point out that it was easily about early September-ish. I went to a forum literally down the street from my Portsmouth house right now at a local church. I think it was brought on by the HRBC. And they had there Bobby Scott and Terry Namkung. And it really seemed like Bobby was trying to throw punches verbally. And I'm like, if he really thought that, this is like a 15, 20-point victory, he could just sort of sit back and run to use our Herschel Walker phrase, because he's a football player, run out the clock by running the football. But no, he seemed like he was being aggressive. And that's something that you do when I guess you feel defensive. And I don't know if Bobby overall feels like this race is in the bag.
Yeah, he got downright ugly in a forum that was done in Hampton for the Insight Forum, which was mainly for for the disabled population. And Bobby Scott pretty much so said that Terry Namkung was against old people, and took some really just unbecoming shots at him, rather than coming off as the incumbent congressman. He came off really, really desperate. And that honestly might have happened because Bobby Scott is not used to having to campaign.
It's sort of like he's not in season. He doesn't know how to be the guy who has the polish of being ahead and knowing how to just be chill and calm about it.
Exactly. And that, having a candidate that is as competent as Terry Namkung is, I think that really has thrown him off of his game. And the question is, how is that going to show up in the numbers after the polls close tomorrow?
I know there is.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to cut you off.
I just took a look at the spending numbers for District 3, and it's very lopsided. Bobby Scott spent almost, or has raised at least almost $800,000, while Terry Namkung's only raised $172,000.
The whole race?
For this election, yeah.
I'm a little taken aback by that, because
I'm just looking at
pretty sure there's Linwood Branch himself raised more than that for city council race in Virginia Beach.
Well, that's a whole other end.
So did Martha Mugler.
We'll get to the Virginia Beach City Council in a minute. That's a whole other driver behind that. But what's interesting here is this is a purely partisan politics issue here. The Virginia Beach City Council issue, that's a money issue. That's a people profiting issue there. This is a party thing here. Looking at the spending too, Bobby Scott's campaign, out of that $800,000, he spent almost $700,000 of it. Meanwhile, Terry Namkung, looking at his, he's spent almost all of the money he's raised. So the contributions and the expenditures are very lopsided on the side of Bobby Scott. And let's look at his contributors. Let's see, individuals 200 or more is 306,000 of it. PACs and other committees 452,000 of it. So most of the money being dumped in here is from PACs and zero actually from party committees. But party money is probably being poured in through PACs there. Let's look at Terry Namcom's contributions. Only $700 from PACs and other committees for him. Most of his has been from individuals and loans made by himself.
Really?
He loaned himself $56,700 for his campaign.
I want to do
he's getting a lot of funding.
I want to do a quick comparison because I was just leaving to go to work today, and I turned on 790 AM, which had at the time what is left of the Rush Limbaugh show, and they were interviewing a woman, Ms. Vega, who's running in Virginia 7. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure her and Higgins are getting millions upon millions of dollars, and to see Terry only get like less than 200,000, I guess shows you what they thought of the race going in, and that also. Does it seem like 800,000 is kind of low for Bobby?
Well, this is the thing. If you look at Bobby Scott, you know what I mean? We're talking about money that he's raised versus money that he's put aside, from other races. And, just kind of the strategy around where money has gone for Bobby Scott. Like I said, he's done 2 mailers in Hampton. I don't know what he's done in Newport News. I know for a fact that he did not do a mailer in Chesapeake, and barely wanted the northern part of Chesapeake. Yeah, the top part of Chesapeake is CDT. Yeah. He did not even really want to pay canvassers to go out in Chesapeake for him. I mean, it's just been, to watch this, from a bird's eye view, it's just been interesting to see the way that the Scott campaign has kind of scattered like ants when it's come towards responding to Terry Namcomb, because they don't know how to do this anymore because they haven't had to do it. He's either unopposed or he's slam running against an idiot, and this is a different ball game. But you look at Scott Namcomb and the money that's in it, between both campaigns, $1 million total, right?
Yeah.
Then you look at CD2 and the money that's being spent across the country.
Yeah.
For CD2.
To compare real quick, I just pulled up CD2. And Elaine Luria has raised nearly $10 million, while Jen Higgins has raised $3 million. So I think something that reflects there is that CD2 is viewed on a national level as a more competitive. It's a hotter seat. It's more competitive of an election than CD3. I think really, the Republicans don't really see CD3 as a seat that they can take, and Democrats don't really see it as a seat that they see it more as a seat they can defend than usual. But I think definitely CD2 is seen as the swing seat locally here for House of Representatives.
It's the main card. It's the main event. But
it's the headliner of the state, I think.
But what's interesting though about the the finances in CD2 is when we look at the spending. Okay, so we see how much more Luria has raised than Kiggins. She's raised 10 million versus 3 million. But you look at the spending, and on political ads, Luria's campaign has spent almost $9 million, while Kiggins has spent $7 million, a lot more than it's raised. And you look at independent expenditures, and they're heavily on Kiggins' side from non-campaign sources. There's a whole lot of non-campaign related organizations weighing in on this race. We have $6 million being spent on anti-Luria ads versus $3 million, half as much being spent on anti-Kiggins ads. 2 million on pro-Luria ads and 1.3 million on pro-Kiggins ads. So we see one thing that stands out is the campaigning is largely negative. The ads that are being bought are anti-Kiggins, anti-Luria, which, in this sort of political environment, I guess we could kind of expect, especially from the independent expenditures. Like outside groups tend to weigh in to attack rather than to support. But when it's telling, and I'm not exactly sure what it's telling of, that so much more money has poured into Elaine Luria's campaign, but so much more money has been spent against her.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, case in point, you can't watch a football game without seeing an anti-Luria campaign.
I was just thinking about that.
I couldn't turn on my car without one coming on the radio,
Exactly.
And the ads are, and I mean, this is going into the whole national political conversation, really. The ads are rarely about anything in particular that Elaine Luria has done or that Jen Kiggins will do, but rather it tries to, like the anti-Luria ads I've heard mostly try to tie her to Biden.
Yep.
Exactly.
And say, oh, well, inflation's high, so, vote for Jen Kiggins because somehow that's going to help that.
Or Elaine Luria has voted 96% with Nancy Pelosi, and
they try to equate her to somebody that, because I guess the thinking is that the average voter isn't sophisticated enough to parse the election of their actual candidates. They can only think about names they hear all the time, like Biden and Pelosi, and so if you tie her to Pelosi, everybody who doesn't like Nancy Pelosi will say, okay, I'm going to vote. But I mean, they already know she's a Democrat. But, something I noticed that they're not going after her for, the anti-Luria ads are not going after her for her participation on the January 6th committee
at all.
Which is interesting because, if you look at the national conversation and if you look at the general position of the Republican Party, their platform is essentially anti-democracy. It's essentially, let's have January 6th again, only this time let's have it work. And so I find it interesting that they'll push that in certain circles, but in other circles they will try to sweep that under the rug,
Especially because Kiggins herself hasn't been able to authoritatively take either side as to whether or not Biden won the election. And I think
she doesn't really take a side on any issue, to be honest. She doesn't even take a side really on abortion.
Well, that's not completely
probably
true.
More so did when she was running for state office.
Yeah.
And that's not completely true, but the only people who would know that Jen Kiggins took a position on whether Biden won the election are those people who actually had access to the debate that was done on Channel 3. That's not going to be something that she's taken a position on that is going to receive national traction.
What did she say in that debate?
She said that Biden won the election and he's terrible. I mean, there were it was it was bad.
Yeah, I heard Lori did pretty good.
She came, I mean, if it was to the point where Elaine made a comment, she's like, if anybody's playing a drinking game on when, you know, on how many times Jen Kiggins is going to say Biden and Pelosi, they would be in dire straits. And I about cried laughing because Jen Kiggins just came off. Just it was worse, if equal, if not worse, to the Warnock Walker debates.
Well, it's hard to get worse than that. I mean, when
yeah,
you take out a fake police badge in the middle of a debate,
right? I mean, but it was terrible. But the thing is that, you know, what I've noticed on the peninsula is that, especially in individuals who have come out to early vote, they're not aware of the redistricting. So they would come to early vote in order to vote for Elaine, not realizing that Hampton is no longer a split district. And, you know, you tell them about that and they're like, well, what can we do? And I was like, you need to call the Luria campaign and volunteer. You know, because that is, you know, that's the only way that Hampton can really get involved in, you know, the Luria Kiggins race. But also to add to that, I don't think that Terry Namkung and Jen Kiggins have been working together at all. I think that CD2 and CD3 have been treated as their own races that are separate from each other and that really don't have any real ties to each other. And I don't know whether to call that a mistake or a wise choice, because honestly, you know, I'm gonna call it what it is, the bad press that's surrounding CD2 has had no impact on CD3. And CD3 honestly might be that race that comes in under the radar as something that no one expects.
If I made a comment, and this is already something I thought about at least a year or so ago, when I first noticed that now State Senator Kiggins was running for that office, that it seemed like I already knew she was going to run for Congress. And I could tell that it's like they were trying to copy what Elaine Luria is with Kiggins.
Oh, yeah.
And now you can't really say that one side is a greatly more military than the other. Or I am remembering right now the Kiggins ad that said that Luria had weakened the military via Biden.
Like,
he's the one here. He's the one running on the idea that she increased by like $60 billion stuff just for the Navy. And I'm like, especially because if you consider yourself more progressive, that isn't necessarily something you might like. Right. But it is, that's true. And somehow the very conservative Kiggins is trying to, you know, say that she's anti-military or something like that. Yeah. It's weird.
It's taking the easy way out of, rather than campaigning against the actual candidate, just tying her to a larger political figure like Joe Biden and saying that, you know, every policy that Biden has, you can lay it at Elaine Luria's feet, which just plain isn't true. I mean, she has opposed Joe Biden on things like specifically military spending. I mean, it's just plain unfair to say that Elaine Luria is weakening the military. And you got a good point, Conrad, about how it's almost like they're trying to imitate her, like they've seen her success in CD2, and so they want to sort of clone her as a candidate. Like the Republicans are like, oh, we got to get ourselves a female retired naval officer to run against her. You know, they tried the former Navy SEAL officer, but that didn't work out so well.
Boy.
It's kind of funny, actually. I saw on Scott Taylor's page a couple weeks ago. He posted some. It was just like a funny sort of thread, like what's the most overused phrase that you've heard over the last 10 years? And my first thought was, I'm Scott Taylor and I approve this message.
By the way,
or what is it? Yeah, I'm Scott Taylor and I approve this message. Or my staffers didn't.
Yeah. I never read this message. Yeah, I heard somebody another person got indicted from that actually recently.
Yeah.
I will never, ever forget the debate at the Wyndham between Luria and Scott Taylor. I had the pleasure to sit within earshot of Susan Bates Hippen. Let me tell you, Scott Taylor was like, well, how are you going to, say that, you have issue with me when you said that you voted for me? And Elaine was like, yeah, I admitted I voted for you, but I'm now running against you because I realized the mistake that was.
Yeah.
The whole room erupted.
Do we have any thoughts on District 1? I think that has a little bit of the peninsula out, like Squeakin' and Pocosin or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's York County and Pocosin. I haven't looked at that like literally at all.
I will admit,
I'm pulling it up right now on VPAP. Let's take a look here. We've got Republican Whitman, Democrat Jones, and then David Foster, Independent. That name sounds familiar, David Foster.
No, he was independent, I think, in District 2 in 2020. And he is someone who is interesting enough to remember because he made a lot of Facebook posts, but I don't think he even got a lot of followers.
Yeah. So, well, here's something interesting about District 1. I'm looking at the campaign finance. I mean, if you need something interesting to talk about, always just pull up VPAP and look at the numbers because they can give you something to talk about here. In District 1, the Republican Rob Whitman has raised $2 million, whereas the Democrat Herb Jones has only raised $314,000.
It must be the kind of thing where they just don't think they even want to try for Virginia 1.
But then it's like, why do the Republicans pour that much money into it if they think it's such a lockdown?
I mean,
and the Herb Jones campaign has only spent $25,000 of it. He's still got a cash balance of $289,000 in the bank. Like, what's he doing with all that campaign money?
Is that all election day pollsters?
And why? Because I mean,
Rob Whitman spent $1.4 million almost. So I don't get what's going on there.
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, if you want to get into a conversation about sundown towns, if there is anything that is, a true, clone of a sundown town, Pocosin is it. I mean,
I want to provide two takes, if you will, that I were able to screenshot from my Facebook feed today, specifically on the broader House races. And we'll tie in this comment here before we move on to the local races. This is from a friend of mine, Derek Wade, who I told to tune in tonight, so hopefully he's watching as I read his own quote. My best guess for tomorrow's election is that Dems narrowly hold the Senate. The House is a horse race, though. The pundits and pollsters are dramatically underestimating frustration with the GOP, in my opinion. Dems have a 4.4 million vote in the early voting lead. That's not going to be easy to overcome. And if there is a red wave coming, where was it in the special elections in New York, in Arkansas and Kansas. I just don't see reps sweeping the board tomorrow. Wish I could fast forward through tomorrow, though. That was the end of his comment. And here is earlier in the day, a more very upset at the Dems take from a very ardent progressive comment from Mr. Mike ZQ, saying the Democratic Party is going to lose everything this election cycle because they focus on divisive identity politics rather than addressing the realities of the natural class distinction, system of capitalism, more of a economic issue. So I'm wondering, is there actually a legit amount of Democrats who wouldn't want to show up because of their belief on Democrats?
Not at all. That to me is, I might just call it what it is. That's asinine. I think that it is going to be, especially looking at your, your states like Kansas and the states that have, your trigger law states, especially, because the repeal of Roe, has ignited a firestorm that I don't think anybody is prepared for. I think that it's going to cause some waves, because you've got an electorate of women that are fire mad that are going to show up tomorrow. And I think that decision is going to have effects not just in this election cycle, but in election cycles to come. Like, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's running for city council in Norfolk, and we were talking about the effects of the Roe decision on the Virginia House and Senate race for next year. And that is legitimate. Like, it's a part of the conversation now, because women are, where women did not, where they showed up for Youngkin, when he took over, they're going to show up even harder in the House seats, in the House delegate and the state Senate races next year. And I think it's going to be a lot of pollsters, their numbers are going to get shattered because they underestimated, suburban white women and women of color.
Yeah, I mean, I think Republicans would really like for it to be the way that your commenter said, that the Democrats are about identity politics, but and they'd love for it to be about their boogeymen on CRT and transgender rights and everything. But two things have really buried that hope for them, and really made the campaign about something else entirely for Democratic voters. And those things are, one, what Nakia was just saying about Roe. About almost half the battle right now is about abortion rights and really women's rights in general. But the other half is democracy itself is actually on the ballot this year, and the stakes could not be higher, especially in the House of Representatives, because if leadership of the House of Representatives changes, you can say goodbye to the January 6th investigation. And if the leadership of the Senate changes, you can say goodbye to any more judicial appointments during the Biden administration. You better hope that no more Supreme Court justices die or retire until we have another set of Senate elections and we keep the presidency, because Mitch McConnell is not going to let Biden confirm another judge the entire time that he's in office if he gets back in control of the Senate.
Exactly.
And you go down to the state races, and this isn't so much the case in Virginia yet, but if you go to states like Arizona or Pennsylvania, you have people running there who have outright said that once they get the reins of power, they will use that power to keep it. They have outright said that if I'm elected to the position that certifies elections, then I'll never certify another election I disagree with. There's really a choice between democracy and fascism on the ballot. And that, I think, is part of what's making this midterm election have such a higher turnout than past midterm elections. This is almost like a presidential year election, really, because we are choosing a style of leadership on the scale of a presidential election, because we're deciding our entire system of how we choose leaders, of how we govern. In some of these places, it's looking a little scary what the result could be. I mean, Arizona really worries me. And it's frustrating to be over here on the other side of the country, not able to do anything about it, even cast a vote in it, because if Republicans take control of the governorship and the Secretary of State over there, those electoral votes are going to go to whoever the Republican is in 2024, regardless of how people vote in Arizona. And if that is the difference between one candidate or another winning the election, we're in big trouble. If it all comes down to a Secretary of State in Arizona or a governor in Pennsylvania saying, no, I don't like these vote totals, I'm going to give it to the Republican, what's going to happen to our country? And I think that's something that is not lost on a lot of Americans, especially Democratic and independent voters. Well, it's not lost on the Republican voters either, such as they are anymore. I mean, it's not the kind of Republican Party I ever recognized from the past. It's changed into something else entirely. It's the American Fascist Party now, as far as the people who actually are still in the Republican Party. There are definitely conservative voters who don't go along with fascism. Like, my dad is a strong conservative Republican. He voted for Trump the first time, but he didn't vote for him the second time. And he's strongly opposed to these demagogues that say that, they're going to make sure that their side wins every election from here on out. Because, frankly, that's un-American. It's undemocratic. It's frightening. And their willingness to engage in violence for those ends is frightening. And so I think, and I hope at least, that a lot of voters recognize that this election is the chance, and might be the last chance, to firmly repudiate that sort of politics. Because if election denying Republicans, if the fascist candidates that are saying things like, I won't certify another election that I don't agree with, if they are soundly defeated, then the message gets sent that this is not a winning playbook. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, if they're not soundly defeated, if they win, or if it's close, they're still going to keep trying this. Or even worse, they won't have to try it. They'll have control of the reins of power. So that was my little rant on fascism and the importance of this midterm election here.
Here's the kicker, though.
And I mean, one of the things that I just find just interesting is Texas is literally in the margin of error. Mm-hmm. Like, who would have ever thought that Texas, the gubernatorial election in Texas, would be in the margin of error?
Mm-hmm. And as you just showed a few people, Ted Cruz just got beamed by a beer. And
That was funny as hell. I'm sorry.
There have been some major demographic shifts in Texas that have really changed the voting population there. And there have also been some major events there that I think have shaken the worldview of some Republicans there. You know, like Texas has always been known for being, the Wild West when it comes to guns. You know, everybody's packing one and everything. But then you have something come along like Uvalde, and suddenly it's like, well, you know what? Maybe we do need a little bit of gun control.
Yeah, but remember, that's sort of what killed off Beto's campaign was El Paso had happened, and he was very particularly anti-AR-15, and I think that sunk his presidential hope. So is that something that would carry in to this? You just said, Nakia, that he's actually within the margin of error, and he has been vociferously anti-gun before, so people know about that.
People are coming around on that, I think. I think some people are actually changing. People are changing their stance on gun control in Texas. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to go all out, assault weapons ban in Texas. It's still Texas. Yeah. But, you keep having events like this, and sooner or later, the side for doing something about it is going to start to gain some momentum. And when you can look at the overall national crime debate. I mean, Republicans really want to go on and on about crime lately. That's their latest talking point for the national elections is crime, even though the statistics don't really bear it out. But regardless of the actual, crime rates, and regardless of the fact that crime's higher in red states than in blue states, leaving all that aside, just looking at the party stances, fundamentally, Republican positions on crime and how to address crime are reactive in nature. They want to increase incarceration. They want to, crack down. Democratic solutions, on the other hand, are proactive, trying to prevent crimes from happening in the first place. Having gun control, having, social reforms, things like that to try to keep crime from happening in the first place rather than react to it after it already happens. And at some point, especially when you live in an area that gets hit with tragedies like mass shootings, especially one as tragic as Uvalde, because that really, I mean, even all the way over here, that hit people hard. And it's still hitting people hard as we're hearing the 911 calls from the little kids and things like that. And it, the failure of the police response there is really driving it home that, the police don't necessarily make you safe, and something needs to be done about stopping these things from happening in the first place, rather than relying on men in uniforms to come and save you. It's better if a madman doesn't enter a school with a rifle in the first place.
Exactly. And I'm trying to carry on your position on crime and how that might influence, especially the Texas race, knowing what Governor Abbott did with Governor DeSantis to funnel literal humans to Martha's Vineyard. And I wonder if that's the type of thing that could also backtrack heavily in Texas.
Yeah, especially when you consider that they're using their own taxpayers' money to do it. I mean, I'm sure it's not lost on voters there, like even ones that are anti-immigrant and pro stupid stunts have got to stop and think, wait a minute, did they just use our state budget for a campaign stunt?
Yeah. It's got to be the type of thing that pulls back on that, but a big deal.
It's the 2A crowd in our country is really starting to shift. I think that, we saw a lot of movement, if there's any time similar to now that we saw like this movement, it was Sandy Hook. Now with Uvalde, we're starting to see that move as well. And you can look at it, if only from, not only the differences that are happening with the 2A debate, but then you look at the demographic shifts as well, because the population of Texas is increasingly becoming more people of color. And when that electorate shifts so hard, then the politics of that electorate also changes, because then, especially with, a more Hispanic electorate, you're going to have conversations about the income to poverty gap. You're going to have conversations about immigration. You're going to have conversations about, just so many other things that have not honestly been parts of the conversation before. And, case in point, anytime that, when the entire police force for Uvalde ISD was basically told, kick rocks. That's, to, explain the gravity of that and how serious that is. That's huge.
Yeah, when a rural Texas county literally defunds the police.
Literally, they defunded the police. And, the moron that Greg Abbott made of himself at the press conference that happened after Uvalde. Just
Beto came in and
when Beto came in. Yeah. And he made himself look like a moron. And I think that, in this Texas governor's race, you might have a very similar reaction by the Republican electorate as there will be in Georgia, where some folks might stay home. And I mean, I'm not going to sit there. I would never bet the farm on that, but we'll see tomorrow night. Because I don't think that the motivation to go out there for Abbott is there like it was previously. And that's gonna be interesting to watch, because even when Beto was against Ted Cruz, I mean, Christ, would you have ever thought that a Democrat would come in single digit numbers to Ted Cruz? Because what was it, like 6%, I think?
I thought it was lower, actually.
It was close. It was close, especially for Texas. And, now you've got, especially in a post-Trump era, you've got plenty of people that are not here for the nonsense. And that can definitely, if it doesn't show its ugly head tomorrow night, then it's definitely going to show in 2024.
Now that national ethos, I don't know if I'm using the word ethos correctly, but the national belief that there's going to be a big turnout almost on par with the presidential thing because of various topics that are really driving a lot more people than other midterms. Does this trickle down to the bottom ballot races? And we're about to switch now into the various bottom ballot races here in the 7 cities. But do you think that momentum is going to bring up a lot of turnout for their races too? At least
I hope so.
Do we have any thoughts on what, because I know we all sort of represent different cities here. But we don't have a strong Chesapeake contingent here, or Norfolk, or Newport News, or Suffolk. And I don't have that much thoughts on it because I haven't been following it, and that is my fault, I guess. But does anyone here know a little bit more about Chesapeake and Norfolk and Newport News and Suffolk that we might want to sprinkle in here before we go to our specialist studies?
I could talk about Chesapeake.
Sure.
Chesapeake's going to be really, really interesting. I do think that this has the potential to be Les Smith's time to get onto the city council. I think that things look really good for him. I think that some of the other races for Chesapeake City Council, I think, are really going to depend on the electorate turnout. Because Chesapeake, of course, leans more Republican than not, but there's some interesting things that are happening that might make some headwinds. Let's see. Of course, Ella Ward's on the ballot. I don't think she's in jeopardy at all.
Any challenger might, have a puncher's chance to get in on both school board and city council.
I think Shirley Auguste is very well positioned to win her race. If anybody, I think that Shirley Auguste looks really good to be successful. I think Malia Huddle has a really good shot as well for school board. If anybody, I think for city council, definitely Les Smith. I think Les Smith looks good. And I don't think that Dr. Ella Ward is in jeopardy at all. The two other candidates that are running on the Democratic ticket, which is Brad Moore and Jeremy Rodden for the special. I don't know. Those are kind of toss-ups. Those are the only ones that I can't really make a call on because of the fact that there are, Republican challengers as well that kind of fit more into the, the Chesapeake demographic more than those two.
I do want to shout out briefly former guest at the Beach Brothers show, Blazin' Buckshot Bloom, who is running as a special, I don't know if it's a special race, but I know he's running for school board in Chesapeake, and friend Jeremy Rodden, who I did go to a campaign event at his house, so I just want to shout them out. I don't know the races, and I don't know polls there. I don't know how they're going to go, so I do appreciate that you brought a lot more information to Chesapeake than I know about at the moment.
Yeah.
So.
And interesting and unpredictable things can happen in municipal races because a lot of people actually don't know.
They don't know.
And since we don't label them by Democrat or Republican for the municipal races, they don't always benefit from the up ballot. So usually the incumbent has an advantage there because a lot of people are coming in from, their campaign or, people that they know are turning out to vote for them. And meanwhile, the challenger might just, nobody knows them. But, and we'll get to this with Virginia Beach soon. Interesting things can happen when you have smaller areas or districts to vote in because a candidate can make themselves known within a district the way they can't necessarily within a whole city.
Right.
And I think that brings us to Virginia Beach because this is going to be an interesting first run for our new election system. Which
just before we get to VB though, I'll hold that thought because I just want to get if we have any thoughts as a group on Norfolk, and I have no knowledge about Suffolk. I know a couple names in Newport News, and I know, Vicky, you already mentioned the city council race in Norfolk. If you just have any other thoughts on those other cities too, let's drop them in now before we go to the others.
Newport News. Newport News, the mayoral race is going to be interesting. There have been some things that have happened as of late that I think might have an impact on the Newport News mayoral race. Tina Vick is being sued by her previous campaign manager, and that hit the press recently. So
I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah, so that that might be interesting. Like there's been some some news around that.
I also heard about the city council race had a little bit of controversy.
Right, with Reverend Maxwell. He's in jeopardy of losing his church's nonprofit status because he was campaigning from the pulpit. So Newport News has had a lot going on, because of the fact that, they've had some news, some news around them as of late. And what that might open up is, some underdogs that might, break through. Newport News is also, that's done by district. So that, as each race is, kind of its own essential animal, as it will. The only one that is at large at this point is the mayoral race, which people have had their pulse on, since people declared. So it'll be, that race will be interesting to watch for Newport News.
What are your thoughts on Norfolk?
Norfolk, again, ward-based. Hard to say. Some people, I believe, in school board races in Norfolk. I'm about to pull up the Norfolk list so that, because I know one candidate's race. I know the candidates in Ward 4, which are Philip Hawkins, JP Page, and Eric Barrett. The race with in Ward 4 has absolutely become a money shot. It's definitely been a money shot across the board. I don't think that Ward 1, I don't it would be a whole shock to my system if Mark Thomas lost in Ward 1, because he's been in his position for a while and he's very popular,
very interconnected,
right?
Cities, yeah.
Right, he's very popular and very much so interconnected. Ward 2 is not even a conversation because they're running unopposed. Ward 3 for a city council is a non-conversation because Mamie Johnson is running unopposed. There are 3 candidates for school board that I'm not familiar with. Ward 4, of course, is the 3 candidates that I told you about for city council. A better's bet for school board would be Tiffany Buffalo, because she's very community, community connected. Ward 5, the school board race is unopposed. I doubt Tommy Smeagol is going to have a problem. So
yeah.
That's my bets for Norfolk.
All right, and since I don't really know much about Suffolk, for any Suffolk viewers, I just want to say, hey, I hope you're enjoying this watching so far. Now it comes down to the 3 that we all have ties to. I do want to start in Hampton because you happen to be a candidate there in Hampton. So let's start from the school board up. If you could just give all the candidates, including yourself, you can give yourself another one of your elevator pitches if you want to. Just give a rundown of what you think about the school board races and the city council races too.
All right. So Hampton, we'll start with my race. I am running against 3 incumbents. Hampton has 3 seats available and 4 candidates that are running. There is Rick Mason. I'm sure you can hear the tone in my voice change. There's Rick Mason, there's Jason Samuels, there's Joe Kilgore, and there's me. Mm-hmm. So in my race, the loser loses. I'm taking a position of cautious optimism. Of course, I think that I'm the best candidate for the job because I know my city and I care about its kids. I'm probably also the only candidate who has a well thought out and developed website that outlines my views and my positions and the things that I want to do for the children of Hampton City Schools. So if you're in Hampton, I'm the only woman and the only non-incumbent on the candidate on the ballot. I hope that you will come out and vote for me because I'm here for our kids. So, and you can ask me anything. If you have an email, if you have a question up through election day, feel free to send me an email because I will be checking through it the entire time. Oh, Kelly. Yeah, I'll be checking the entire time. And we'll answer it until the whistle blows. So I'm not gonna talk about who I think is the bottom rung on the ladder because it's my race. So
I appreciate that.
I'm gonna leave that one alone.
you're with other folks here who have run before, and it's getting on the issue whether or not we want to particularly bad mouth or stay above the fray is the whole type of thing.
Because I'm sure not gonna jinx myself by talking about who I think is the the weakest link. But I hope it ain't me. How about that?
Would you say that you've been able to get enough information that you know about the rising tide of momentum into that race, or is it like a lot of us, we just have to wait and see?
I think it's more of a wait and see. I think that because this is the first election that because there is a national election tied to early voting, I think there will definitely be an impact with that to the ballot in local elections. And I have treated it as such. I've made it a point to be in front of the Hampton Voter Registrar's office every day. I think that I've missed one day in all of early voting. And because I realize how important it is for me to talk to people. I did not have the financial windfall that my opponents had. So because I didn't have the signage all over the place and all of that, I made it a point for people to see me, because, if I can't sit there and blow smoke up your behind with all of these campaign signs and all of that, then I'm going to be there asking you for your vote. And that's how I treated early voting.
How much would you like to speak on the council race?
Yeah, I'll speak on council. Well, there's 2 races that are happening in Hampton. There's the city council general election, and then there is the city council special election. The city council general, it is 5 candidates competing for 3 seats. There are definitely 3 fundraising front runners, which would be Jimmy Gray, who is the current vice mayor. Jimmy Gray is a good guy. I like him a lot. He's objective. He's a person for the people. He's easy to approach. And he's one of my favorites. There's Steve Brown, who is an incumbent. He's heavily financed by the Democratic establishment. Then there's Martha Mugler, who's very financed by
you mentioned that earlier,
by the Democratic establishment. She used to be a House delegate. She was on the school board at one point in time, and then she ran for House delegate, and she was successful in that run. She was a House delegate for 2 years, but lost her seat to AC Cordoza. And now she's running for city council. When it comes towards Martha Mugler, there's kind of 2 sides of thought. There's the fact that she is extremely politically connected. Her husband is the commissioner of revenue for the city of Hampton, which could be seen as a conflict of interest. Then there are others that are literally coming to the polls to not vote for Martha Mugler. So that is going to be interesting. But Martha Mugler has more money in her city council race than Terry Namkung has in his entire congressional run.
That is
then there are 2 newcomers who are basically grassroots. And I like them both, honestly. There's Chris Matthews. He came to this area from Chicago. But
does he play hardball?
No, he doesn't. But he used that in his campaign, though. He used that with it's not spelled the same as Chris Matthews on MSNBC, but he tells people, he's like, sounds like Matthews, but not spelled. No, sounds like Chris Matthews, but not spelled the same. But he's run completely on being better neighbors to each other. Mm-hmm. And that authenticity to me, it just it speaks volumes about him. Like, he's a community volunteer. He started a 501c3 for to pair veterans with kids for mentoring. He's just a good dude. He's a good dude. And anybody listening who is, a Hampton voter, I think you should give Chris a shot. I think he's I think that he's somebody that will make a world of a difference on city council. The second newcomer is Marlon Manley. I like him a lot too. He's no nonsense, like off the cuff, regular dude. Born and raised here, family is very connected to Hampton. But really just comes straight from the chest with solutions for the city of Hampton that are logical and that are really a common sense approach. I think it's going to, I don't think Jimmy Gray is going to have a problem with getting reelected. And I think that it's going to be a hairline between Chris Matthews and Martha Mugler. I'm not sure what Marlon Manley's race is going to look like, but if he's not successful, I see him doing other things in Hampton in an election capacity. Like, I don't think that if he's not successful in his city council run this time, that he will be out of the political arena after that. So the next election is the city council special election.
Mm-hmm.
And that election is between Randy Bowman, who is a business owner in Hampton. He owns a popular soul food restaurant. And Hope Harper, whose husband was very connected in Hampton. And she served on a lot of commissions and boards in the city. And that's a toss-up too. They're both Democrats, but they both kind of have different resumes. You know what I mean? Randy is a small business owner. He's done a lot of philanthropic work in Hampton. Hope is, she's worked on some pretty high-powered campaigns in the city of Hampton, specifically Anton Bell, who's the current Commonwealth attorney. And she's served in a lot of political commissions and government commissions in the city of Hampton. She's also part of she has a big Greek following because she's a Delta. So I can't call that one.
Okay.
So we'll see. I kind of have a little bit more input on the general versus the special election. And in the school board race, I just want to be in the top 3 so that I can make a real difference.
Here's wishing for that. I do want to sort of tie in the fact that you referenced how much money Martha Mugler was able to raise for a city council race. If I believe you said it was a city council race, and here I'm looking at the VPAT for Portsmouth City at large, and I think the highest one is 77,900 by Mark Hugel, who I was able to interview on a forum. That was a very good show. And have you ever seen someone raise nothing? Ever? Because current Delegate Woodard has raised nothing, according to VPAT.
BS.
I've seen people report nothing.
Yeah, that's BS.
And I wonder if that's what it is, because it doesn't say NA, it says $0. And I don't know the man personally, and I'm not here to besmirch him, but is it worse visually to report nothing as opposed to say, and I don't want to bash on Ronald Diggs here, but only 2,600? That is something, and you can see where it's from, but we can't see where it's from. when you put $0.
Well, I think reporting $0 is more likely to attract the attention of the Attorney General.
Right.
You know.
And I know he's an incumbent, and his sign's down the street.
Mm-hmm.
I know Vernon Tillage, who was on the Community Action Team's Greater Forum, he's raised about $35,000. Donna Sy, who Mike, I don't know if you know. Well, have you seen much of Barbara Messner recently? She is the version of Barbara Messner in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
But for Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And she's running for council. She's even listed $900.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Moody, the incumbent, Mark Hugo, I mentioned. Onyx. Onyx 6 is very prominent, about 11,000. Diggs at 2,000. Nathan Clark, who I thought has been on before, if I'm not mistaken, he only raised about 1,600, but he's doing sort of a co-campaign with he and Bill Moody. Paul Battle's an incumbent, and he's raised about 18,000. Clu Atkinson, who's on the current school board, like Vernon is on the school board, has raised about 4,000. And Sharon Denise Anderson has raised about 4,700. It's a very... Portsmouth is all at large. So this is all trying to fight over like 3 seats and going against some incumbents too. And there's a big anti-incumbency wave in Portsmouth. It's made enough news locally for firing city managers and replacing city managers with already fired police chiefs. I'm not police,
Right.
but fire chiefs. You were there to speak on some of this stuff too. What are your... and I don't know if you follow much of this too, Mike, but what would be just the general thoughts going into tomorrow for Portsmouth? Because I'm thinking that there might be a couple of these challengers sneak through.
My general impression of Portsmouth politics is chaos.
Yeah.
True indeed.
And while there may be a very strong anti-incumbent wave, when you have 11 candidates running for, or is it 3 seats or 4 seats?
3 seats.
I thought it was 3.
3 seats.
Yeah.
3 seats.
3
11 candidates running for 3 seats. That really weighs things in favor of the incumbent, because your anti-incumbent vote is split so many different ways there. And I know from experience how much just one vote splitter can make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to talk about candidates not raising very much money. I remember that Suzanne Henderson raised about $250 in 2018. But had the effect of taking about half of the anti-incumbent votes away from me in that election. So that sort of environment where you have so many candidates running for so few seats, my money would be on the incumbent staying in office in that situation.
Yeah, I disagree with you on this one.
Mm-hmm.
I think that out of all of this, I think that probably Bill Moody is very safe. And I think that Vernon Tillage has a shot of displacing Paul Battle or Chris Woodard. And the only reason why I say that is because Portsmouth is so nasty right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that, I had the chance to sit in a couple of those city council meetings and see those citizens throw venom at Paul Battle and Chris Woodard and Whitaker and DeAndre Barnes, and they're pissed.
They cursed a lot.
Especially when you have you have 2 candidates that are in elections, and then you have 2 other candidates who are in the middle of a recall, because they're trying to recall Barnes and Whitaker, and the recall on Barnes looks super duper promising. Like, I think that actually might happen.
But what are they recalling them for? Because in Virginia, you've got to basically be accusing them of a crime.
And that's happening with Barnes.
What's
It's
even
a version of corruption with Parks and Recreation funds, because I think,
Right.
he's on city council. He is the vice mayor. And he also runs, I think, either a league or various
Parks
teams
and
within
Rec
a
League.
league within Parks and Rec. And it's where the money from organizations is going funneled, and whether that is literally into his pocket or
And it
some
is.
other things. And there have been various amounts of receipts shown by
Me
Great
too.
Portland residents, like I think you just said and also Mr. Barry Randall, who have been doing their homework, see exactly where the money is coming from and where it's going.
It's nasty.
So they're currently circulating a petition for that.
Yeah.
Yes, they're currently circulating a petition for that.
Was Woodard in that, or was it Whitaker? I think Whitaker is one of them.
Yeah, Whitaker is
and Barnes.
Like, the issue with Whitaker is, well, Barnes is the one that the corruption charge has been has been alleged against with the Parks and Rec funds. The recall on Whitaker, that in itself is connected to the issue with Angel Jones and the fact that basically Whitaker was doing things that was outside the confines of his position as a city councilman by having private meetings and informed Angel Jones that she could either resign and receive a substantial severance package, or she could choose not to resign and get fired. And that's exactly what happened. And right now, Angel Jones is suing the city of Portsmouth for wrongful termination. But, just to add to the kerfluffle that's happened in Portsmouth, these citizens are pissed because not only behind Angel Jones being terminated, but also behind the nasty severance package that was negotiated for Tanya Chapman. $400,000 if she's fired within the first year. They gave her $200,000 salary when she has zero experience as the city manager, and a $400,000 severance package, which is asinine.
How much of that do you think could affect the council race?
I mean, honestly,
could that sink Battle, for instance, because he's very close to supporting that side of the aisle?
Yeah, it's gonna hit Battle and Woodard. That's who it's going to burn. It's going to burn the two of them because they are part of that coalition of individuals who approved it. They are part of those individuals that, because it was 4 that approved it: Woodard, Battle, Barnes, Whitaker. And they're the ones that approved Tanya Chapman taking over that job. They're the ones that approved her salary. They're the ones that approved the severance package. And if you think that Portsmouth has been passive, it's not going to go down this election. And that's a fact. Like, I would not be shocked if you didn't see record numbers from Portsmouth.
And I wonder if that will do anything to also affect circling back to Congress 3.
Yeah, that's going to affect CD3.
But what I'm wondering about all those people going to the polls because they're dissatisfied with the city council is there a particular direction that they're voting as far as these 11 candidates to replace them?
Well, I could tell you now that Vernon Tillage has full-throated Democratic support in Portsmouth, endorsed by Eloise Lucas. The support from Lisa Lucas Burke, the support from the Darius Clark, the support from pretty much anyone who's anybody politically that still has a reputation in Portsmouth has thrown their support behind Vernon Tillage. And his history, I support him too. I have known him for years, and I think that from the point that he ran for school board, because he had no, if it hadn't have been for the ridiculous crazy that's going on in Portsmouth, he wouldn't have ran for city council. And he stated that publicly.
That's what Moody said too. Moody was going to retire, and then he said that because of firing her that he had to stay in.
Yeah, exactly. And like I like Vernon Tillage for Portsmouth City Council. I support Vernon Tillage for Portsmouth City Council, and you can quote me on that. I think that he is honestly the best choice on that ballot. I don't think that Bill Moody is in any danger of losing his seat, primarily because he's an incumbent. And his reputation isn't shattered. He's the only incumbent who doesn't, who has actually operated with integrity that is on the ballot currently.
And I'd also say that, hold on one second. No delegate.
No, we haven't got there yet, Kelly.
We're saving that one for last.
I was trying to get us there too.
Yeah. Basically, before we go over to Virginia Beach, and before I briefly touch on Portsmouth School Board, how much of a shot are the other big challengers in Portsmouth? Like Hugel seems pretty squeaky clean and raised a lot of money. Clue's on school board. She's already doing work. Onyx works in the local NAACP. She's very prominent in terms of doing activism. Or is it just too many challengers to make a dent?
The last one, honestly, is a toss-up. It's a toss-up. I like Clue. I think that the work that she's done on the Portsmouth School Board, as well as just the fact that she brings a real uniqueness to to the Portsmouth to the Portsmouth City Council if she's elected. I like her for that, but I just think that there are too many people on that ballot to really make a real guess. I also like Onyx for that as well, because of the external support that that Onyx has. I think that the final when the trumpet sounds in Portsmouth, I think it's going to be between the two of them.
Okay. By the way, it's a much smaller race for school board. It's we have Melvin Cotton, Tamara Shoemake, Q Futrell, Arnett Devon McSwain, and incumbent Cardell Patillo. I don't know how that's going to go.
Me either.
But at least it's a smaller race, 5 versus like 11 candidates. Which will sort of turn it over. I hope you're still watching Delegate. Because now we're going over to the biggest pot of them all in terms of candidates played amongst so many districts. And I don't exactly know where to begin. Should we begin as a general concept of Virginia Beach and where we think it might be, or do we have to because it's not wards, but districts now?
That's a good place to start. I guess city council is a good place to start as any. You know, this is a very different election for Virginia Beach this year because, as you said, now we're voting by district, which gives smaller candidates a much better chance at succeeding. It's something that we've pushed for a long time. It's something that we had a federal lawsuit about because, to be honest, it was a Jim Crow policy to dilute minority votes. And it's something that the wealthier interests of Virginia Beach are not happy about. And looking at VPAP, can see that though the money is more spread out, I haven't seen this much money being thrown around since the last mayoral election, when we had, you know, literally millions going in.
Yeah, Jody got over $1 million, if I recall.
And what's always telling with these is when you look at who the donors are for each candidate, there's always one candidate with a lot more money than the others in each race. And if you look at the donors, it's the candidate that has the most money is always the one being backed by various real estate development companies.
Franklin
and that's
group, Breeden Company, stuff like that.
Yeah, the Breeden Company. You've got
Michael Sison.
Yeah, you've got Columbus Station Apartments donating money. You've got basically the dynamic here is that the reason there's so much money going around in the Virginia Beach City Council races is because those seats are worth a lot of money. You know, Virginia Beach is a hotbed of very, very valuable real estate development. And city council largely controls where all that's gonna go and who's gonna get the contracts for that. And you know, while to some extent that's sort of the way the game is played when it comes to municipal politics, I think it's such a weighty factor in Virginia Beach that we end up with council members that aren't thinking about any other issues, you know, and there are, you know, social and equity issues that need to be addressed at the municipal level that I don't think even become generally a part of the conversation because, you know, you've got progressive candidates like our endorsed candidate, Paul Telkamp, raising only $5,000 compared to Barbara Henley's $75,000. You know,
a lot of that she rolled over from election to election, if I recall, like at least 29,000.
Yeah,
from a previous race.
Yeah, and one interesting battle here is District 6 because that's where you see the most money going in. It's a fight between Linwood Branch and Worth Remick, and they both have a lot of money coming in. Let's see, looking at the top donors for Linwood Branch, his biggest donor is Heidi Laderberg. Who is that?
I don't even know the name.
Industry Services, Hair Care, Dry Cleaners, Employer Benjamin and Moore Company. Second one for him is $9,000 from Randall B. Coles, who is in financial services at Goodman Gable Gould Adjusters International, public adjuster. So an insurance guy, it looks like. And then $7,250 from Pembroke Enterprises, commercial real estate. So there we go. But now let's look at his biggest competitor, which is Worth Remick, who his top contributors are. Robinson, Thomas Eugene, 5,000, real estate developer, Robinson Development Group. David Webb, commercial real estate. I mean, these are all real estate.
I guess it's saying something that it's seemingly different real estate people. It's not. I imagine that there are some out there where you see, well, wait a minute, I saw that name on the competitor as well. But it's like a hedging of the bet type thing. But yeah, it's like they want certain things to happen, and they think that candidate in a few years will be the one who might help vote on that sort of thing. So that's where they're going to get the money from.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say that like these candidates are for sale necessarily, but
they're certainly not turning the money away either. So.
Yeah, there's a reason why these developers think that that's a good investment, and that's exactly what it is. It's an investment. A really interesting one, actually, that I looked at tonight was our District 10 City Council election between Heidi Daniels and Jennifer Rouse. Now, I know Heidi Daniels. She's the manager of the Green Run Home Association that I was vice president of for a while before I moved, along with Kim Bentley, who was the president at the time, who's now running for school board in that district. But and Heidi Daniels she's a good person, and she's I think would make a good city council member. She's very rules oriented. She's very aware of what it takes to run a community. But our endorsed candidate from the Progressive Caucus is Jennifer Rouse, because she is a sociology professor. You don't really become a sociology professor without getting some progressive credentials there. And she is Aaron Rouse's wife, and I believe she has some more focus on some of the social issues that I was talking about that the candidates, bought by real estate money don't really tend to think about. But what I found interesting, anyway, getting back to that election with Heidi Daniels, was that her largest donor by far was the Virginia Beach Police Benevolent Association, to the tune of $50,650.
Jesus Christ!
They definitely endorsed.
That's almost half of her budget. And I'm just kind of wondering why that is, to be honest. That's a crazy amount of money.
Here's the thing: how much money do you see from VBA PACE go to anybody?
I haven't seen that as a donation anywhere.
Here's the reason why I mentioned that, because yes, they're the police. It's not like they're specifically a police union, like you might think it. But it's former police, so you know that's police interest, and you sort of think it's police and teachers as being represented by, or they want to be representative of a different party interest. So
right.
Police would be Republican, teachers would be Democrat. So I'm curious, is there like VBA PACE sending $5,000 to anybody or not?
I don't know. I do know that Heidi was a former police officer, so that might have something to do with why the Police Benevolent Association is giving her so much support. But that amount of money is just kind of eye-popping. From
how much did they give to Rocky?
To Rocky, where's he on here? I don't see him on here.
Is it just you can't do it because he's currently in the sheriff's office?
Oh wait, that's a special election, right? So I need to pull up a different 2022 special election. There we go. He doesn't have anything from the PBA.
That is strange.
He has 8,000 from Franklin Johnston Group, 5,000 from Bruce Thompson.
Real estate.
3,000 from the firefighters. Let me go back to the 2022 election here.
Is that election even competitive between Rocky Holcomb and Melissa Peck?
Financially, it doesn't look like it is, but
I hear Melissa has a lot of voter contacts, but I simply don't know if Rocky also doesn't find the time to knock on doors.
Right. See, that's the thing. Melissa doesn't have nearly as much money as Rocky does, but again, we're now doing district elections. So it's theoretically possible for her to get out there and knock on most of the doors in her district. And from what I've seen, she's been out there, pounding the pavement every day, knocking on doors. And I mean, she could pull it off. And I mean, that would be a major upset with, a 5-to-1 budget disadvantage. Actually, almost 6-to-1 budget disadvantage. Rocky's raised 63,000. She's raised 13,000. So
Makes me
Yeah.
wonder if you get a couple of races where the challenger money-wise actually wins because it's district, is that going to allow these developers and such to believe that actually investing so much isn't that good of an idea?
I think it would take a lot for that to be the conclusion that they make. I mean, for a long time, we've seen money poured into Virginia Beach City Council races, and I don't think that's necessarily going to stop. Although there could be some rethinking of it, considering the change in landscape that's made by our new voting system. So they might take a look at the results of this election and say, you know, maybe it's not as good of an investment. So that's certainly possible. It's going to take more than the result of one seat to do that. Another one I found interesting was where'd it go? District 4 that we didn't give an endorsement for. Amelia Ross Hammond is running unopposed, but has raised $37,000.
And that's probably going to go over 40 by election day's posting.
And I'm just like, why?
And she's putting up signs, big old banners as far down as the municipal center. I imagine that's just to get some early votes.
And the donations are Breeden Companies, Apartments at Spence Crossing, Franklin Johnston Group, Bonnie Road Associates. You know,
if you're running unopposed, do you even need developer interest to throw money at you unless it's a way to entice future votes to go toward the developer interest?
Exactly.
What's your opinion on the Lubeck Martin race?
We're gonna get to school board in just a second.
School board in a minute. Got it.
That's actually where I wanted to go just now. So actually, yeah, let's start with that one with Stacy versus Ken Lubeck. And really, you know, you can take this as sort of a microcosm for the whole thing, because basically what we've got here is, and this is the school board race is what I'm really passionate about this year. You know, the city council race is the typical, you know, trying to play Monopoly or whatever. But the school board race here is basically the ground floor of the more national battle between democracy and fascism.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there is a not secret at all plan on the fascist side to start at the school boards and work their way up. And the school board is a particularly insidious part of their plan, because of course there's the typical attempt to put their sort of worldview into indoctrination of our children, you know, by whitewashing our history classes and erasing the identities of LGBT individuals from our schools. And even, I mean, this is the really mind-blowing part for me, is that they even are vocally opposed to anti-bullying measures. Like, they are pro-bully. Which is just, I mean, when you realize that it is part of a fascist plan, then it makes more sense.
Yeah, not on my watch.
But so anyway, getting to the Virginia Beach School Board, we've had for a long time 3 certain members on our school board. One of them is in this election, Carolyn Weems. Then we also have Laura Hughes, and then the sort of ringleader of them, Victoria Manning, who are basically on the fascist side of things. They are the ones pushing for. They followed the playbook. They started out with anti-masking during the COVID pandemic, which then moved on into CRT panic, and then translated from there into anti-trans measures, and then to book bannings.
They also used the strategy of trying to create an entire fake organization.
Yep. They have plenty of fake organizations now, or plenty of fronts anyway. I guess they're not fake because they are sending real money. The one you're referring to there, Conrad, was that Virginia Beach Teachers Association, which was kind of a humorous episode, at least to some people. when, for those who don't remember, it was, what was it, the 2020 election?
Either that or 19.
19 or 20. On election day, out of nowhere, signs appeared at the polls from an organization calling itself the Virginia Beach Teachers Organization, as opposed to the Virginia Beach Educators Association. And it had a list of candidates endorsed that were very suspicious because they were not very pro public education candidates. And they were all, the Republican side. And on that election day, several people, myself included, did some fast and furious research and discovered that the group had just been formed a couple months before that August by Laura Hughes, the school board member. Mm-hmm. And it hadn't filed their campaign finance reports, which they got fined for in the end. And actually that ended up being the only legal consequence they faced. But we put them on blast that all through that election day. And I later gave a speech in the school board calling out Miss Hughes for what she'd done. But this year, the issue is not a fake teachers association, which, I notice is not participating in anything anymore because, it never was real. There was never a single teacher in it. But now the organization they're using is called Students First Virginia. And this is they love Orwellian names on the far right. They like to say, like that it's parents' choice, that it's students first, but it's always particular parents whose choices they support. It's always particular students that they want to put first. And so Students First Virginia.
Trash ball. How trash ball.
Oh, yeah. And Students First Virginia has given $5,000 to $6,000 to one candidate in each of these school board races. And so you can pretty much tell which candidate you should and should not vote for in each of these school board races by looking for that one particular donor. So let's start with Ken Lubeck and Stacy Martin. Ken Lubeck has received $6,200 from Students First Virginia out of his total $10,000. So more than half of his funding has come from this anti-CRT, this racist, anti-trans group that wants to ban books, that wants to erase history, has given Ken Lubeck more than half of his budget. So I think it's fairly obvious to anybody paying attention that they should vote for Stacy Martin unless they want to do an old-fashioned book burning.
Which they might.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. Obviously, there's people in this city who are like that. I'm not one of them.
Me neither. Well, I'm living in Virginia.
I mean, personally, I think in the words of Indiana Jones, goose-stepping thugs like that should try reading books instead of burning them. But anyway, let's go to the next school board. We've got, let's go to District 2. So we've got three candidates here. We've got the incumbent Kim Melnick, who we know is not on the side of Victoria Manning and her crew. Amy Solaris is the one that's gotten the Students First Virginia nod. Out of her $24,000, $5,750 of it has come from Students First Virginia.
And what separates her from Gertie's?
Now that's a good question because Gertie's has actually raised more. Her top donor is Dan Crenshaw.
Who's
the U.S.
that?
House of Representatives from Texas, eye patch guy.
Oh.
$3,700 from Dan Crenshaw for U.S. House.
And she's the big second district on down type Republican establishment candidate. So that it's like two different factions.
Her third donor her second donor is James Prescott at $2,500, and then she has $1,250 from Virginia Parents First Coalition. And we all know which parents they mean.
Yeah, because Amy Solaris is the crazy woman that went after Melissa.
Right.
That went after Melissa Lucasen. Yeah.
Right. So basically, we've got far crazy for Amy Solaris, medium crazy from Gertie's, and then normal from Kim Melnick. So I think we're going to stick with Kim Melnick there in District 2, if you're in District 2. If you don't know what district you're in, find out. There's a website. You can look it up. We can probably put it in the comments or something. District 6 School Board. We've got Sharon Felton, the incumbent, who I love. She's amazing. Michael Callan is running against her, and he has raised $35,000 to Sharon's $8,000. $35,000 is a lot of money for a school board race.
He pays like $5,000.
It's not a lot for a city council race, but for a school board race that doesn't control real estate budgets, it's a lot. And out of his $35,000, $5,000 of it has come from Students First Virginia.
How are they raising that money?
Jesus.
Moving on to District 8, we've got Carolyn Rye, the incumbent. I've known her for a while. She's a perfectly normal person. And then David Culpepper running against her, who I don't know, but let's look at his donors. He's raised $23,636, and his top contributor is Students First Virginia, $5,000. So I guess we know who to go with in District 8 would be Carolyn Rye. Going to District 9, that's where I'm living now, over in the Bayside area. We have the incumbent, Carolyn Weems. Now, remember I said the names of the three who cause trouble on the school board right now, who are the far right ones. We've got Victoria Manning, Laura Hughes, and Carolyn Weems. These are the three who have refused to sign the ethics pledge for the school board. These are the three who refuse to hold, like they try to stand in the way of votes and gum up the works and basically try to get in the way of school board business, because their idea is if they can't control the schools, they're going to burn them down. So they basically want to break public education down. So Carolyn Weems, top donor, she's raised $22,000, $5,000 from Students First Virginia. And then finally, District 10, we've got my friend Kem Bentley, who was he was president of the Green Run Home Association while I was the vice president. Really good candidate, really organized guy. He's a fair guy, and he's a progressive guy. He's only raised $7,000 though, because he's a normal school board candidate. Kathleen Brown, running against him, has raised $28,000. 5,750 of them from Students First Virginia.
I'm amazed that they got like over 30, 40 plus thousand to just burn. Like, where are they getting
basically, like, what does that say about just their donors?
Yeah. It's a whole lot of dark money coming in from outside of this area, because, like I said, this is part of a larger plan for the country.
They're building their bench that way.
This is the ground floor of the fascist plan, is to either turn the public schools into places where they can essentially raise new fascists, or cause them to break down so that they can move on to things like private school vouchers. And so if you can't make your kids' public school into a whitewashed fascist paradise, then you can get public funding to send to a private school with the rules that you want. That's the general idea for these folks as far as education goes. And as you can tell, it gets me a little bit hot, because it's dangerous, and it's a perversion of public education.
I do have a follow-up specifically on that, though, and how it ties to the district. How well do you think it might actually work?
How well might it actually? It all depends on how these elections end up going, because, you know, right now, those three have not been able to make a lot of progress on their agenda because the majority of the school board, normal people led by Beverly Anderson, keep things on track. But if they were to flip, say, 2 or 3 seats on the school board, and God forbid get a majority on the school board, then hold on to your hats, because you're going to see some wild stuff happening in Virginia Beach if that's the case.
Well, I remember that because earlier in the year, I briefly considered running for the seat 10 in city council, and I had learned more about it. That the district itself is designed in such a way that it is actually more minority representative district is what they're trying to do. And because of that, does that mean that $10,000-$15,000 of this type of money going to a school board race would be Kathleen? Is that wasted money?
I don't know. I mean, you know, like we were talking about earlier, having district voting makes the impact of money a little bit more blunted. Like it's not the crushing cudgel that it was when we were running at large. You know, if it were still at large elections, I'd say we would be in big trouble in races like that, because that kind of budget disadvantage is very hard to overcome when it comes to just getting people to know who the heck you are in the city. I mean, like when I ran for city council, it was at large. And I remember Jim Woods spent as much as my entire campaign budget in just one ad buy. There was no way I could ever have competed with that. But since now we're on district voting, it is possible for a candidate who's motivated like Kim to go door to door. And I got to tell you, I mean, I'm pretty sure anybody that actually talks to Kim face to face about public education and about the school board race would vote for him.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think it's certainly possible that he could make that $28,000 on the other side a waste, which would be incredible. You know, I would love to see this so-called Students First organization waste a ton of money in these school board elections. But it's really going to be a tense day tomorrow, you know, as we wait to see the results of these elections, because I think these school board races are going to be more impactful in the long run than any of the city council races in Virginia Beach. Because, I mean, gosh, if you think you've seen crazy things at school board meetings so far, just wait until the crazies actually have the wheel. You know.
Now, what's middle resolution PAC?
That's a good question. Let's look them up real quick. Let's Google.
They're throwing a lot of money.
Middle resolution, because they haven't been donating on our side.
Because they donated to Carolyn Weems.
Mm-hmm.
They're
So
out of
let's see.
Mechanicsville.
Middle resolution PAC. Found at middleresolution.org. The Middle Resolution is committed to identifying and electing qualified candidates who align with core conservative principles, advocating public policy that promotes the proper role of government in education, healthcare, and election law, and holding leaders accountable to their promises to their constituents. That's a lot of buzzwords there for the far right.
$1,000 to Callan for Virginia Beach School Board. They donated $8,000 to Amanda Chase.
Yep.
Amanda Chase. Oh man.
Kathleen Brown, $6,535.
Mm-hmm.
Solaris, $49.83.
You can definitely see the flavor of Republicans.
Lubeck, $45.56.
Let's see, in the city council races, you see that kind of money and you think, oh, well, okay, obviously this is a financial investment that they're expecting a return on. Well, what
These
kind
are
of return are these organizations expecting? It's not a financial one.
It's interesting that they donated in the thousands to school board candidates, but they only donated $200 to Glenn Youngkin.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
Well, they might not have felt they really needed to in that race since, you know, Terry McAuliffe barely campaigned at all.
Part of the
True.
football.
I'm not
No,
going
but-
to get into that conversation because we'll be on here for another 4 hours.
We already
Yeah.
had that show. We already had that show.
But, you know, just to go off a little bit more about fascism in the school board races and before the school board in general, you can see the tactics as well in the school board meetings with the parents, well, supposedly parents, that they have showing up to berate the school board members and call certain books pornography and all this other stuff. They are loud, they are rude, they are sometimes even violent and threatening.
I just wonder if they're small.
There's been at least one or two that I can think of that have had to actually be ordered to stay out of the school board meetings because of their behavior.
One of them attended January 6th.
One of them, yeah. And this is not an accident. This is not them losing control. This is exactly their tactic, because these are fascists. And they try to get their way by bullying, coercion, and even violence. And it's something that has to be repudiated at the polls.
Strongly. Would you like to give a prognostication on each of these school board races?
I can tell you what I hope happens.
Well, let's begin with that.
I hope that the non-fascists win at least enough seats in the school board to hold on to control of it. Now, as we go through the individual races, where did BPAP go? Dang it. Hold on, let me get this back up again. Local. So if we go back over here to Virginia Beach. All right, got it back up. So going through the individual races. District 10, we were just talking about that one. I think we've said plenty there. I hope the best for Kim. Financially speaking, he is David versus Goliath there, but you know, hopefully that doesn't matter as much. Hopefully he's been able to get out and knock enough doors to make a difference there. District 9 is interesting because despite being an incumbent and despite having the support of that Students First group, Carolyn Weems has only outraised Erica Guest by about $4,000. Carolyn Weems has $22,000. Erica Guest has $18,500. Let's look at Erica's contributors.
Yeah, it's worth a look at that. That's what I want to know.
Her top contributor is $750 from Do the Right Thing PAC.
Okay.
Her second is Alex Askew for delegate. Then we've got Caitlin Granger. All these are $500 donations. Nancy Guy, Michael Johnson, Constance Johnson, bunch of individuals. Energize for Change PAC. So I don't see anything insidious in her donors, you know. But Carolyn Weems has the advantage of being an incumbent, and that gives you a certain advantage at the polls and municipal elections in particular, because a lot of people come to vote not having even looked at who the candidates are for local elections. And sometimes they'll just leave that part blank, but other times they'll just be like, oh, well, I don't think there's been any problem, so I'll just check the box for the one that has the star next to their name. So we'll see what happens there. My hopes are with Erica Guess, because if she wins, not only does that keep the other side from flipping a seat, but it actually flips one of theirs. And it would be great to have, Victoria Manning's crew whittled down by one. Carolyn Rye versus David Culpepper. Well, Carolyn Rye has the advantage of being incumbent here. We just talked about the advantage that being an incumbent gives you. She has less than half as much money as David Culpepper. But, between her incumbency and it being district voting, I think she could have a good chance of staying in office. District 6, there's probably a reason why the other side has pumped so much money into Michael Callan's race versus Sharon Felton, and why Sharon Felton hasn't raised quite as much, because Sharon is pretty safe in her district. I think District 6 is the down by the beach. It's a heavily African American district. They like Sharon there. I mean, who wouldn't like Sharon? She's great. I don't see a so-called students first platform gaining a whole lot of traction in that district. So I think Sharon is safe. District 4, Stacey Martin has half as much money as Ken Lubeck. But again, large chunk of that money for Ken Lubeck came from that one Students First PAC. Who's Stacey's top donor? Let's take a look at that. Alex Askew for Delegate and Do the Right Thing PAC both gave her $500.
It's interesting to see Alex investing so much in the school board.
Yeah, I gave her $100. I gave Kim $500.
I'll have that sort of down. I was normally doing like 25 at a time.
That was back at the beginning of the race. So, District 2, I think Kim's probably going to be safe there. Kim Melnick is probably going to be safe in District 2 because
split their votes.
Yeah, the other side has split their votes. I'm sure that has caused a lot of infighting on the Republican side there.
Let's hold that thought for when we mention City Council District 2.
Yeah. Well, that's all the school boards there, so we can go on to the City Council.
Well, let's start from 1 then.
All right, let's start from 1, which is interesting, of course. That's the special election. Rocky Holcomb at $63,586 versus Melissa Peck at $13,449. District 1 is what area? Where is that?
Kempsville.
Kempsville.
That's a decent chunk of Kempsville. It's in the Salem Woods, near Food Line on Farrell Parkway and Food Line on Pleasant Valley.
So I want Melissa to win for sure. She's got it's going to be a long shot for her. It's going to be a tough battle for her to win that, because not just with the money Rocky's raised, but Rocky has name recognition. He's been on city council for a little while.
Known to have taken a loss.
What's that?
He's also known to have taken an L. That's
true. That's true. He took a big L from Cheryl Turpin. But his name has been on signs for a lot more than this one election. But that said, I know that Melissa's had a really strong ground game. So it's really just going to come down to, has she been able to knock enough doors before tomorrow? And if there was a piece of advice I'd give to the candidates tonight, it would be, find the most busy precinct in your district and put yourself there, because you can boost your vote count at that precinct by a fairly significant amount just by being there yourself and talking to people in line.
I had personal experience with that last year when I think I was at Windsor Oak Elementary. I was there from 6 at the start to 7, passing out stuff for candidates, and I think the candidate I was supporting won that particular precinct. So I like to think that being there, speaking to people, handing them stuff does make that last bit of difference.
especially when you're the candidate themselves. Like when the candidate themselves comes up to you in line, introduces themselves, and asks you for your vote, there's a good chance that that person, unless that person was already going to vote for the other side, they're probably going to vote for you because they just met you, you know?
The voter contact, they just like that.
Yeah.
How
I mean,
about,
you can turn all of them like that, but you can get a considerable number of the undecided voters just that way. And with it being district voting now, that busy precinct can make all the difference.
in that instance, let's move on to 2, because when you think about 2, that seems like a sparser populated, much more wide, got to split it among all these precincts.
Yeah, District 2 is interesting. There's a lot of money in there, but it's spread out among 4 of the 5 candidates. Paul Telkamp didn't get any of it, but you know, he's got $5,000. But Barbara Henley is, of course, the head of the PAC, PAC, P-A-C-K, not PAC, P-A-C. I mean, she's been on city council since Virginia Beach has been a city. So it would certainly be a remarkable thing for her to get voted out.
Do you think that concept of not party in your mind, but incumbency in your mind, is that enough to sway it in that particular district? Because I know, let's say you wanted to go for the classy Disney or business interest, and that would be Mike Mouch. If you wanted to go for the Republicans that are outright Republicans, then you have Elaine, who's the conservative, and that who's the entrenched establishment Republican. I've seen plenty of signs when I am driving around that area, and I've had to do it a few times with my job, that tie people who had Barbara Henley signs and also Kagan signs. So it's not like there isn't the idea that she sort of leans Republican. So it's a group of 5 people where a good 80%, you'd say, of the voters, of the candidates, are on the center to right side. So that should be, this is the great chance that the Democrats would have to want to flood a district for their specific candidate. And as a personal statement that I would want to make, it just seems so odd that they completely decided to do the opposite.
Well, I can't speak for the sanity of the Virginia Beach Democratic Committee. So, I mean, if they were smart, they would have, you know, put some weight behind Paul. Obviously, they chose not to really do that. But I'll say this, you know, like I said before, in regards to Portsmouth, statistically speaking, splitting the vote, especially splitting the vote multiple ways, favors the incumbent, because on a certain level, you have a pro-incumbent vote and an anti-incumbent vote, but there's only one incumbent. So you can never split the incumbent vote. So, and Barbara Henley is a fixture in Virginia Beach. Like, she is well known in the community here. Especially that community. District 2, there's a lot of older people there. Older people like Barbara Henley. I would be surprised to see Barbara Henley go in this election.
All we have to do is look at the very last time she ran. And you had Karen Kwasny, and you had Tim Worth. And there seemed like there was a little bit of an anti-Barb feel, and just because there were so many, it didn't muster enough.
Yeah, and I think even if you had added Kwasny and Worst together, it wouldn't have been enough to take down Barbara Henley. Just like, you know, I talk about the vote splitting in my race, but if you add the vote count together between my vote and Suzanne Henderson's vote, it still wouldn't have been enough to beat Jim Wood.
I'm reminded of one person. I'm not even saying that they're particularly serious, but who wanted to make a comment about my 2019 run in a special election against Mr. Bellucci, that my being there as the only other name was itself a vote splitter over, and like how it's two people. But in any case, that's not that important. But in the end, so I think the smart money would be on Barbara just retaining the seat.
I think so. I mean, my hopes are with Paul.
Oh yeah.
You know, I can't vote for him because I'm not in that district. Maybe I should have thrown some money his way.
Just for the sake of trying to at least be transparent with my bias here, I am going to Calabrese School tomorrow to be passing out literature and be the opener for the VBDC, yes, but I'm also going to try my best to get as much support out for Paul that I can do. And I don't want to say that as a Beach brother or as the Community Action Team. I want to say that as Conrad Schesventer. But in any case, that is at least for two.
I'll be roaming around tomorrow too. Mostly roaming around as an attorney looking for instances of
voter intimidation.
Yes, I'm going to basically be doing my own voter protection patrol. But I might stop somewhere and get some lit to hand out for some people too.
Cool. How about the unopposed race?
So yeah, District 4. I don't know. I think Amelia has a pretty good chance there, since nobody's running against her.
Let's see if she gets more votes than she gets Dallas.
I mean, I
don't know what else to say. How about District 6?
All right, District 6. I mean, all right. Obviously, somebody out there has decided this one's got to be a battleground. Obviously, it's between Linwood Branch and Worth Remick. Kat Porterfield really doesn't have very much name recognition, hasn't raised much money, and RK, I mean, come on. RK always runs.
I think Delegate Fowler's comment here about she's anti the 10-1 district, I think she might mean the unopposed Amelia Ross Hammond, which former council member, which I think the fact that she lost to Jessica Abbott would sort of show you that it probably is important to keep on to district voting.
You're talking about Amelia there?
Yeah.
Yeah. She would strike me as sort of a wealthy establishment sort of fixture.
It's amazing how if you already had the money, you still need a lot of money in your coffers in order to run for office. And of course, I also had that joke in my mind, like if I decided to run for city council 3 or 4 more times, would I still be able to catch RK in terms of total amount of times run? And I doubt I would be able to, because he'll keep running. It's just the way he is. How about perhaps your thoughts on the race? Do you think that Branch holds on to that?
I don't know. That one's going to be competitive, I think. Normally I'd say that there's an incumbent advantage to vote splitting, but I don't think RK counts as a vote splitter.
No.
And
I think he's trending downwards over his years, less and less each time.
Yeah. Kat Porterfield, I mean, seems like she basically made a half-hearted attempt at a run. I don't know. That's going to be a tough one. I think that the Democrats have put more weight behind Worth Remick in this race for some reason.
Delegate, I'd like you to specify which Elaine you're talking about, because they have an Elaine Feckerty and we have an Elaine Loria, and if it's about Elaine Loria, we've already had that discussion.
Yeah.
But if it's about Elaine Feckerty, we just had that discussion regarding school board district 6. What is the atmosphere of that seat, though? Because that's what's considered the Beach district, and that is as much the Beast's interest as any other district would be in the city, and you have a guy who literally owns a hotel already on council. He's the one who raised over like $240,000 for the seat, and then you have Worth. Do the votes change if Worth is on council and Linwood's not?
That's a good question. I mean, no.
I don't know if they do. In which case, how important is it to try to convey to a voter if we're running, hey, I am this significantly different of a candidate, just because I'm not the incumbent and not because I'm the hotel owner doesn't mean that I would vote the same. Especially,
you see, Kelly says the Dems picked Worth Remick before anyone else got in.
Now she's now also saying that Worth is pretty progressive, and maybe he is. What does that mean voting?
Maybe
does that mean that in a dome site type of establishment that he would be less inclined to vote for that, unless it also inclusions for affordable housing?
All right, I guess maybe Kelly could give us some insight there. What do you mean that he's progressive? Like what is he? What's the progressive policy stance that he has?
I would like to know that. Perhaps we might have a future member of the Virginia Beach Progressive Caucus in Mr. Worth Remick, but we'll see about that. How about it's 8 is the next one, right?
8. Yep. So, well, I mean, the money's pretty lopsided here for John Andrews. Wow, I just looked at his money. $18,000 from the Police Benevolent Association. Wow, the PBA has been just like making it rain.
Interesting.
What's going on there? And his second biggest donor is himself for $10,000.
Shit. I'm sorry. Sorry. I've literally just been kind of sitting here listening to Virginia Beach.
Yeah, we would be just crazy.
Leaves and reparations. That's interesting.
Now, here's the thing. I floated this idea a couple of times at Virginia Beach City Council because I know we have an art program. I know we have tourism and investment funds. These are systems in place within the city government to use taxpayer funds to help out a specific interest, be it agriculture or be it tourism. What if there was a similar fund for equity-based projects? You don't need to outright say you for reparations in a municipal election because that reparations would be something that would have to be federal. But an equity fund, if you wanted to create one, that would be the type of thing to run on as progressive.
I tell you, I think probably one of the biggest progressive issues to run on in Virginia Beach is the need for affordable housing and to address the issue of homelessness, which is growing rapidly in Virginia Beach. And the city leadership needs to have a change such that its attitude towards homelessness changes, because what comes to my mind immediately is the story that was in the news last year, the guy that tried to be a good Samaritan. He owned some land and he was letting homeless people live on his land, and the city came in and told him you can't do that and took him to court to force him to kick the homeless off of his land. And
do we also have a record of criminalizing panhandling?
I believe so.
That's all over Hampton Roads. And I think that is the most ridiculous thing that individuals who are sitting behind computers being keyboard warriors can do to homeless people.
Yeah. You know, I actually had an interesting idea. I don't know how I'd go about finding the client to try it, but challenging an anti-panhandling law by opposing a conviction on the First Amendment. Say it's freedom of speech. Like, I can stand out there with a sign that says, you know, the world is ending, but I can't hold up a sign that says I need help.
It needs to change. Exactly. Like I went on the record as coming at the Hampton City Council about that first world problems, you know, sitting behind a keyboard, thumbing your nose at homeless people, policy. I mean, what a crock. I'm sorry.
But basically, criminalization.
Okay.
Yeah, criminalization is not the way to handle anything. I mean, that doesn't fix the problem. That just moves the problem into the jail.
It generates funds for the municipal government is what it does.
Yeah.
Did we finish up 8?
Where were we? Yeah, let's get back on track here. Okay, so 8. Yeah, we talked about John Andrews and how he's given himself a lot of money. Rona Marsh.
Yes.
Rona Marsh. She's basically a big budget naysayer, Tea Party type. I mean, Robert Dean is on her donators list. That should tell you a lot.
Big John Moss fan.
And then, yeah, Chris Taylor. Who's Chris Taylor?
I believe he owns a business, and a couple businesses or so in Virginia Beach. I think one of them was a smoothie place. I've had a small conversation with him on Facebook because, you know, I would like him to be on the show.
Yeah, he's got a lot of developer money.
Yeah. I wonder if that's something that is, well, no, I can't just say that that would just naturally follow the Republicans, because it doesn't.
Yeah.
It just, whoever they think could get in, they're going to flood the money to. Is that something that also plays out in 9?
It's interesting that the VPAP identifies these candidates as Republican or independent, et cetera, when they're supposed to all be independent.
Yeah.
But anyway, District 9, that's interesting place, because John Moss has always been an at-large representative. He, well, I mean, they were all at-large anyway, but
he was like Lewis Jones's neighbor.
Yeah. So he's got a fight ahead of him, but John Moss has been on city council a long time. He has a long track record of holding on to it, but he's never had to do a single district race before. And that this might spell the end for him. Especially since the Democrats have backed Josh Schulman, who also is backed by a lot of money, twice as much as TJ Morgan, and more than both TJ Morgan and John Moss put together.
Coincidentally, this is another race where the VBPC did not endorse.
That's right. The Virginia Beach Progressive Caucus did not give an endorsement here. Part of the reason for that was Josh Schulman's unclear position on the district voting system. I think most of us in the Progressive Caucus are in agreement that you can't really be a progressive if you're not firmly on the side of district voting, because you can't support a Jim Crow policy and call yourself a progressive.
Also, the moneyed interest is just a little too high.
Yeah. Who's his top donor? Franklin Johnston Group.
Developers.
There, real estate developers. Devaris, Marlin Development Corp. Yeah, he's definitely the developer candidate. We'll see. The Republicans have always had a very interesting, I guess is the best word for it, relationship with John Moss. It's sort of a love-hate relationship. He's always been more of a Tea Party type candidate than a Republican candidate. And the actual Republican Party in Virginia Beach has run candidates specifically against him.
And are they? Do they have a sample? I haven't seen if they have a sample guide yet. I assume they do, but I would also assume it's TJ that they're supporting and not John.
I mean, TJ Morgan's signs say Republican on them. Hold on, let me find the. Hold on, let me go over this computer screen here. All right, let's find out the Virginia Beach Republican Party's ballot. Candidates, here we go. So, interesting. These guys, they're a little bit schizophrenic here. For school board, the Republican Party of Virginia Beach has endorsed both Amy Solaris and Alexis Gerdes for District 2 of school board.
I don't even know that.
How do you do that? How do you do that? Oh my God.
I am not entirely.
Are they going to be on the same sample ballot?
I'm now curious how many people will actually bubble in both.
They have also. Okay, hold on. They've also.
This should be good.
For city council, they've endorsed in District 8, Chris Taylor and Rona Marsh. In District 9, they've endorsed T.J. Morgan and John Moss. In District 6, they've endorsed Linwood Branch and R.K. Kowalewicz. And in District 2, they have endorsed Nanette Miller and Elaine Paquette. They want to have it all.
And this is
they want to have it all, not understanding that they are basically going to have individuals who are going to fuck up ballots.
What the hell is this?
This is Republican Party Virginia Beach right here.
I almost wish I was still talking to Jimmy Frost so I could get some insight into this.
I have my issues with him too, but I imagine that he would have scoffed at least that idea. To endorse so many of the same balloted people. Wow.
Yeah.
It's
on their Facebook. It's on their Facebook. Their actual ballot guide, the Republican sample ballot.
What?
Take a picture. Share on your social media. I'm not gonna do a share. Okay, I don't want to give them additional shares. But Conrad, I just took here. I'm pasting it to you in Facebook Messenger right now. City council candidate.
Me too. I need to see that. I gotta see that. Oh my God.
There is a glare off my phone, but I will admit that, yeah, you can see Nanette and Elaine Paquette both listed as D2. You could see RK and Linwood, which are both listed as D6. Rona here and Chris Taylor. Which is that one. And then two for District 9 as well.
And I thought the Democrats couldn't get their shit together.
Oh, no. Let me tell you, the Hampton Dems actually wasted paper and made a sample ballot that only has Bobby Scott on it. And I thought that was bad. This is horrible.
It says on their ballot guide, it says you can only vote for one based on your district. Some districts are not electing council members this year, and there are 2 Republican candidates in some races.
No, assuming that there actually is a sizable contingent of people who follow the Republican Party of Virginia Beach. That would mean if they took it to heart, there's got to be probably
This
as
is
much.
some serious dumb fuckery.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I got to redo my analysis of all of these races now because the Republicans have just torpedoed all of their candidates.
Races. They just torpedoed all of their candidates.
That reminds me. Don't they have a sizable poll contingent, and they will be handing that out?
They will be handing these out at the polls.
Handing it out.
How many Republican voters are going to go in there and actually vote for both and get their whole ballot thrown out?
But you know what? I'm going to tell you right now. If that pushes the congressional race,
Because their ballots get thrown out. Here's a comment on the Facebook post from a guy I suppose is a Republican named Mike Field. He says, I'm curious about the VB Republican strategy this cycle. The sample ballot has 4 city council seats and a school board seat, each splitting the votes, money, and efforts with 2 Republican candidates. The Democrats, on the other hand, somehow figured out how to have just one candidate per position. Seems like a silly suicidal strategy to many of us average deplorables. What am I missing?
And only that has not been responded to, and it's gotten 1 like.
I'm going to give it another like.
I did too. Which is funny because there are some individuals. This is apparently a ballot that's older than 4 weeks, because I'm looking at a comment here that is 4 weeks old. And the Republican Party of Virginia Beach, they did respond to that one, but they did not respond to Mike Field. That one's only 5 days old.
I'm telling you right now, if Elaine wins this election because 8,000 ballots got thrown out in Virginia Beach and it ends up on MSNBC, I swear to God, I am going to pee on myself.
No, seriously, somebody's got to send this to John Oliver or something.
Oh my God.
Hey, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Right now.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I think let me share
Put
this
this
with
in the Hampton Forward group. Put this in the Hampton Forward group. Put this in the Hampton Forward group, please.
I'm doing it.
Please.
Just now.
Oh shit.
For what it's worth, before we get to a 3-hour show, let's close out with 10.
I'm kind of tempted to share it.
No, I would share it all over.
This shit's unreal.
How do I share this to?
Unreal. This is unreal. Wow.
This could literally be snatching defeat from the jaws of victory right there.
It really could. It really could. Like, this could be a whole election burner.
Especially if it is creating a statistical significant situation where it also throws Elaine a victory. That could be the one seat that turns the House dim, in theory. So it could literally affect the entire race because of like 1,000, 2,000 people.
It's fucking hysterical. That's fucking hysterical. Wow. 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 I'm telling you, like, I thought that I was only going to have, the city of Hampton voter results page up for the Virginia Department of Elections, but I'm gonna have Virginia Beach up too because I just want to see. Because, like, do they put on the Department of Elections site the ballots that were thrown out?
That I don't know about.
Yeah, I don't think they do. Maybe
I'm
they
also
don't.
curious, because I know the RPDB is going to be the type of organization that wants to put banners at a lot of polling locations of the sample guide, and I wonder if they also are going to print it just like that.
What does the actual sample ballot look like for Republican candidates in Virginia Beach? I gotta see it. I gotta see it. Oh my God.
Hey, I will be at a thing tomorrow. I'll do a political diplomacy trade-off of one Democrat sample guide to the Republicans, and then I'll take a picture of it, and then I'll send it to you.
Yes, I've gotta see it. I've gotta see it. Because now just my whole fucking mind is just peeved. My interest is so peeved because that's crazy. It's like, we don't want to make a decision, so we're going to tell you to. But nobody is going to try to think. They just want a piece of paper that tells them who to vote for. And don't be too
Mike made that point, and you did as well, that there are a significant amount of people who don't come to the polls on a day like tomorrow thinking about the local races. They need something to help them out because they feel like, you know what, I want to be a good Republican, or I want to be a good
they
Democrat.
just need a piece of paper.
Just need that. And this.
Oh shit!
If that is literally what is being, I would like to think I would have heard something by now from the Republicans who voiced their opinions that this was a bad idea, because I have seen them have damn near civil wars against each other in the Republican Party of Virginia Beach about things far smarter than this. And I haven't heard it.
Because somebody, if we notice it here, there's going to be somebody that's going to notice it there.
Mm-hmm.
And after these election results come in, especially if it is a blue wave because of this fucking error, that the pilot is going to go ape shit stupid.
I wonder if we should all send the pilot an email with these screenshots and say, hey, do you think this is funny? And see what they do.
That's a good idea, actually. But no, I don't want to give them warning. I don't want to give anybody warning right now.
Okay, then let's
want to see this all out.
Let's do it Tuesday night.
Do it Tuesday night at 7 o'clock.
I'm taking this down off my page for now. I don't want to give him any tips.
Don't give them any tips. Send the pilot an email at 7:02 tomorrow night.
But I got to find out how to send this to John Oliver.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, because he definitely gets correspondence from a lot of different local governments. So.
Oh, that's funny. Because I want to see Rachel Maddow talk about this.
How do I send this?
Oh, shit. I'm sorry.
I think the manager with them is Michelle.Goldstein at Warner Media, according to contact here for John Oliver. But
I don't know.
Well,
for this shit.
Let's close out on City Council 10.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we got to finish this up. My wife's telling me she wants to go to sleep.
Yeah, my son is like, Mom.
All right. So where were we?
The last one is just
District 10.
whether it'll be Heidi or whether it be Jennifer and.
I mean,
And
that's one where the Republicans have only endorsed one. So
they only had 1, 2 endorsed, but.
So who knows? That one might depend on the up ballot.
oh shit.
Well, we've been able to have a good last few minutes of good humor, I would say,
Yes.
on that.
That was amazing.
And well, I also want to personally give good luck to Nakia tomorrow. For that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know I won't be able to cross the water to help you out because I'm going to be helping out a lot of Virginia Beach stuff here. But I definitely want to make sure that you prevail. And just that at least your day is fun tomorrow, too. And Mike, and perhaps
I'll be
see you
thinking
around
about
tomorrow.
this. It's definitely going to be humorous.
Any of you guys want to have any final thoughts?
Well, if you listen to this and you are a voter in Hampton, please consider me for school board. I would love your vote. And even if you are not in Hampton, go vote. Go vote, because that's what we're supposed to do. So go vote.
And last thoughts, Mr. Mike?
And Virginia Beach Republicans bubbling too.
Yes. I mean, I can't top that. I want to end on that note.
Well, here first. Virginia Beach Republicans, follow your ballot guides to the T.
Yes.
And make sure you bubble in every option listed.
Make sure you vote for every Republican on your ballot.
That you can. Follow the ballot guide.
Well,
it is instructional, not suggestive.
That was fun. Well, I want to thank both of you guys for coming on. It's been a very lively discussion. And just also get some sleep because we're going to be up early.
Yes. Okay.
Catch you guys
Good night,
next time.
y'all.
All right. Good night, guys. Thanks for having me.